Make work visible. Today's topic for all things value delivery management. Hi, I'm Joshua Barnes, and this is one of the value stream management principles from Discipline Agile, make work visible. So this is going to build upon an article that I put out on LinkedIn this week, and it's also going to build on the last article in the last live stream I did, which was looking at how we can identify dependencies in our workflow. I'm sorry, not dependencies, delays in our workflow, and then see what options we've got to be able to resolve them and improve our flow of value delivery. So I'll start off with a couple of questions. Right, this is one of the things that I'll ask, from a question standpoint. Do you ever feel like this? No one has any visibility into what teams are doing. How about we keep getting surprised? We had no awareness that was coming. We cannot see how work and value flow from idea to consumption of value by a customer. And the last one, we were counting on you to get your part done. We have a dependency on it, and there was no warning of how far out your work is being pushed, right? So are those things that you experience in your work, the team that you're part of, the team maybe that you're supporting, or as a stakeholder, your reliance on teams doing their part so that value can be delivered to a customer, whether internal or external? So what I'll do is I'm going to slide this over and let me share my screen. And what I'm going to do is let's take a look at first, when work is not visible, what are some of the things that we experience? Well, one of the things that we experience is it's harder to manage, right? If we can't see the work, we don't have a workflow that's visible and work in progress, it's definitely harder to manage. How about invisible to downstream activities, right? Again, people are caught off guard. They're surprised. They didn't know something was coming. Lacking effective dependency management, right? So when we visualize our work and we can show relationships, right? Use something like dependency boards to show that. We're able to not only identify and manage dependencies, but even better, we're able to identify what options we have for removing those dependencies. Longer to delivery and consumption, and finally, less predictable. So these are just some of the challenges, some of the things that can constrict our flow when our work is not visible. So some of the options, now this isn't all of the options by any stretch, but some of the options, well, let's visualize our work using a Kanban board. And I'm going to focus on Kanban boards and specifically team level boards for iterations or sprints, but there's many other types of Kanban boards. We can have Kanban boards for our higher level requirements, such as features. We can have it for our intake queue, so to have an effective intake management process so that we know that work is being pulled into the workflow when we have adequate capacity to get that work started and completed. Well, we can use a Kanban board to manage our intake queue. We can use a Kanban board for an improvement plan. We can also do value stream mapping, right? Another way to visualize our work, to understand how we might go from ideation all the way through to where value gets delivered or it's consumable. We've got dependency boards. And the last one, dynamic challenges board. So these are some of the options that from a value delivery manager and from a bringing these things into action, being able to visualize work, be able to manage it better, increase predictability and so forth. These are some of the ones that you have as options. So I'm going to start us off with a very simple, the most simple of Kanban boards when we are looking at either a sprint or an iteration. And this just has 3 columns: to do, in progress, and done. So coming out of our planning event, our sprint planning or iteration planning event, right, our team would have committed to doing a certain quantity of work, right? This is the work that they feel they would be able to get completed within their time box. Typically 2 weeks is pretty common with teams. And so what would happen is they're not going to take all the work. They're not going to, highlight every single one of these stories I've got user stories and a technical story. They're not going to move all that into progress at the same time. That would definitely be something, if we saw that, would be a problem. We'd see a whole lot of work started and probably a whole lot of work that's not going to get completed anytime soon. So what we'd expect to see is, we would see maybe the team members that are going to do the work for this story and the team members that are going to do the work for this story, right? They're going to pull it in progress. All the value adding activities, right? All of the tasks, sometimes this is referred to as touch time, we would see get completed. And then when those stories and the acceptance criteria would be validated and the team agrees it meets the definition of done for the product, it would move over into the done column. So very, very basic board. So moving on to these same stories, but a typical Kanban board that I often see teams use is, we still have the to-do column. So I have my same 9 stories here, my 8 user stories and 1 technical story. And I still have my done column, right? Only those stories that have gone through acceptance criteria has been validated and the definition of done has been agreed to be met, moves into the done column. But now we've got 3 columns in the middle. We have in dev, in QA, and in acceptance. So again, we'd see, work that's being pulled in. We'd see the same 2 stories in development. And then when these stories, right, when this story is completed and it's ready for QA, ready for testing, right? So before the team presents it to the product owner to validate that the acceptance criteria has been met, we're going to do different dimensions of testing. So in QA. And then assuming that everything is going, pretty much how we planned, right? We'd see that story be moving into an acceptance. Product owner would validate the acceptance criteria. And right, so we just see these stories kind of moving on through here. And right, we'd see something hopefully that looks like this. So this is better than the basic Kanban board in a lot of ways. Yes, there's 3 additional columns, but it provides us immediate information into the state that any one of these stories is from a work in progress standpoint. Anybody that's looking at this board that's not a team member can understand, again, what work hasn't been started, the stuff in the to-do column, what work has met done, and then, again, the stages of work that the stories are going through. So now I'm going to show my recommended setup for a Kanban board, again, for either a sprint or an iteration, or pretty much for most work that we would be tracking in this type of an approach. So again, to-do column, same. Done column, the same. Now, even though the names have changed a little bit, the underlined in blue columns, the states in the workflow, in process development, in process QA, and in process acceptance, is pretty much the same thing, right, from the typical board that I showed. But what's really important with this and the difference is that there are states for waiting, right? The time that work is spent waiting. And this is really important to be able to capture, not only from a visualization perspective to know how much work is just sitting waiting for the next value adding activities, those next touch time tasks that people need to do. But we want to start being able to capture how long work is waiting versus how long work is actively being, again, worked on. So what we would see from a flow perspective is the stories coming out of to-do would move into in process, right? We're not going to see waiting for development initially, right? I'll get to that in just a moment. But what we would be doing here is we would see in process development. And now the next live stream and the next article I'm going to do is on explicit agreements around how work moves through these boards. So a little preview into that, what we want to see in process development is not, if we're talking about a digital product, right? We're writing code for a software product we have. We don't want to see that in development, right? The in process state here is just writing code or the more coding related tasks, right? Maybe some analysis, some design, writing of the code, right? Unit testing, that type of task. What we also want is we want everything that needs to be done so that when we move this work item, this story, into the in-process QA, we can actually execute those tests. So we would need to identify test cases, write test scripts, automate test scripts, make sure we've got test data, create test data that we would need so that when this work item, this user story moves into waiting for QA, we know that as it's pulled into the next state in process QA, we're able to immediately have somebody, when it's pulled into that state, start executing testing. So how long work is waiting is very important. How work moves from a value-adding activity state like in-process development to waiting, and from waiting to in-process QA is really important. And the information that we can glean from all of this is very important. So yes, the Kanban board is a little bit bigger. Yes, there are additional columns, but these columns provide almost invaluable information for us to be able to understand what is going on with our flow of work and where we might have some constrictions in our flow to identify what we need to do to make our work flow better. So we'd make progress on, right? So we'd see, let me move some stories around, kind of drag the same ones, and we'd have in-process QA. So we found some defects. So there's a bug, right? So what's going to happen is work's going to go backwards, right? It's going to go to waiting for development, right? We're not going to put it in process development because the work hasn't started on that yet. If we identify a bug and it has to go, it's handed back. So again, we're going to need somebody, hopefully the developer that wrote that code is going to be available to then debug, right, that functionality. Well, we put it in waiting for development. And that's why this column, we step over that when we're pulling work into our workflow. But as work goes backward, we want to know how long that work is waiting. Because again, our team member that is going to need to debug the story, well, they're hopefully more than likely they are working on another story. So they're either going to have to stop what they're doing or finish what they're doing, and then pull that work in process and figure out what was wrong, get it fixed, move it back into waiting for QA. Hopefully this would be pretty quick movement, waiting for acceptance. And again, if we said, that product owner, now they found a bug, it's got to go all the way back, waiting for development, and again, kind of traverse back through. Without these states, we can't really see how long work is waiting, how much work is waiting, how long the work is in a particular state in our workflow. That gives us a whole lot of additional information as we see, right, things moving across. And if we see something, right, that looks kind of like this, well, we might have identified, oftentimes, right, we're going to see something like this. Or it's going to go from in development to in QA, and we're just overloading the team members that have the skills from a QA perspective. Or if we see this, right, it gives us an indication this work isn't being worked on. It's delayed. It's in a waiting queue, right? This is a holding queue. So does that mean we have identified maybe some skill and experience that we need to augment on our team? Do we have a team of 10 people and we've got 8 developers and 1 person who understands testing? Do we have people that are doing a particular type of set of tasks? Again, maybe we've got team members that, yes, their area of expertise is writing code, but we'd want them to be able to step in so that work continues to flow through the process, right? So the point we can get feedback from our product owner and get it to done, or again, a product owner or somebody they've delegated. So we need to see what is causing this. And without these waiting states, very, very hard to do that. So that's the recommended Kanban approach Kanban board approach as far as a iteration or sprint. Again, whether the name's changed a little bit, but again, being able to see that we've got these holding queues to identify waiting in between is highly recommended. So I'm going to go a little bit further now, and I'm going to get into a common situation that we have with a lot of the organizations we support, right? But we use Jira. And I'm using Miro, right? So I'm using Miro, a virtual collaboration platform, a big, virtual whiteboard. And it's something that enables us to see information very differently, because we see a lot of information on this canvas versus something maybe singular from a Jira perspective. So I just want to show how we can use both Jira or a tool like Jira. There's other integrations with tools like Miro. So I have my recommended sprint or, iteration Kanban board, right? The states I just took you through. And now the look and the sort of the color of these work items, these stories is a little different because I've got my instance of Miro that I'm on integrated with Jira. So we can see that right here, right? So I've got, right, story 5, 15, 24. And if I pull up Jira, here's the exact same information. right? So I can pull this story up. Oops, pull this story up. And right, so it's got the acceptance criteria. It's got the description as a customer. I want to see what other like products customers have purchased so that I can make a more informed purchase decision. So I've got all these in to do. So I'm in Jira. Now I'm going to go back to Miro. And here is that same story, right? So I can open it right now. It's going out and getting the information from Jira. And so again, everything's here, the same acceptance criteria, using the Gherkin approach, right? Scenario given, when, then, and hit cancel. So here's what's great about using Miro. If you are using Jira and you've got that integration, and I'm going to expand upon this in just a moment. But if I take this story and I move it to in-process development, what I can do is I can click my little Jira symbol here, and I can go to workflow. And what it's going to do is it's pulling up the workflow in Jira through that integration. And I'm going to move this to in progress development. I'm going to hit update. And even though I'm working in Miro, if I go back to Jira and I refresh this, you can see that card the ticket, right, in Jira has already moved. And why is that important? Why am I showing this integration between Jira and Miro? Well, I'm showing it because this is one of the approaches we use with teams to be able to get some insight into their workflow, see where we can start making improvements. Again, these are the types of things that a value delivery manager would be able to help with. So I'm just going to zoom in. This is sort of a standard sort of frame that we use, iteration over iteration or sprint over sprint. And again, this just has the team capacity for the team's gone through, and just some people are going to be out of the office. We've got, in this one, Carlos, he's out of the office for a whole week. So Carlos has only got 32 hours of time available for this sprint versus Smitha, who's got 64. And again, this is 80% of available capacity. We're making sure that we've got a little bit of time reserved for the unexpected. All right, so we have our team calendar, we've got our recurring events, and we've got our goal, and we've got, again, some subject matter experts. We've identified some time. So here's our Kanban board, right? And so having this and being able to, again, be, moving things back and, moving things on our board, it's great as a team to focus in Miro. Now, you can do this in Jira, but what you can't see easily with just sliding the canvas around is some of this other information, right? The other thing, and I covered this in the last live stream on the Discipline Agile Value Stream Management principle, which is removing delays in your workflow. And I'm going to just zoom out for just a second. So you can take screenshots, right? This is one of the practices that I highly recommend to teams. It's one of the practices that we see our people in the value delivery manager role making sure is happening, and then looking at this information. So again, coming out of our planning event, we've got all the stories we committed to doing. And again, we're, day one, we've got 3 stories that was pulled into the workflow. And day 2, again, we're seeing some movement. Day 3, let me zoom in just a little bit more. These are just screenshots that have already been taken, but day 3, this one's been blocked. This one's going backwards, right? So we have something that is in the state here that is called needs clarification. Same thing, blocks, it's still sitting there. We got some other movement, right? I'm just going to keep zooming up. So we've got this story, and this story has gone backwards more than once. And so we've got a different type of indicator. Like this is one we're kind of watching because this one has been in the workflow for quite some time, and it wasn't due to an impediment that was needing to be resolved, right? And so we get down to day 10. We've got some icons here on our screen that we've placed on our screenshot, right? That's just, the hourglass, meaning these are carryover work, right? So this is work that, again, if our product owner feels, as well as the team, that these are still stories that are valuable to do, well, as we move into our next planning event, these are ones that we would already know that we're going to have to accommodate. And then, additionally add some more stories in based on, again, the ordering, the priority, and our backlog, and again, the remaining capacity that we've got. But by having these states, again, we can see when work is waiting. If we see one of these stories through capturing daily screenshots in a waiting queue, or we're seeing as it's moving, again, through the workflow, both forwards and sometimes backwards, well, we want to know what's going on and why is it taking so long. I'm going to zoom all the way out and see if I can get all this on one screen, right? I know it's pretty small, but yeah, having Kanban boards with columns that reflect, right, the touch time versus waiting time, having screenshots, capturing this visual information so that, again, you can look back and see what's gone on. We can see what we committed to, how much work is kind of moving through the process. Really, really helps quite a bit. So let me put this down and this down. And now before I'll see if we've got any comments, any questions that I can answer. I will bring up where you can learn more. So we have quite a bit of training as well as enablement services to be able to help with value stream management. This is just showing two of the courses we've got. One is really geared for project managers and leadership. This is an understanding of value stream management. We are also one of the few PMI authorized training partners that delivers the value stream consultant certification, as well as a lot of the tools and products that we have specifically for, again, understanding how you can identify and manage the value streams that you have in your organizations and improve your flow of delivery. So let me get back into here and we'll just see what kind of, if we do have any comments here. Okay, so great. Abdullah, great to see you. And let's see what else we've got here. Never thought of approach. Thank you for sharing. Great. Thanks for sharing, Manish. So anyone else that's watching this live, if you do have any comments or questions, please put them in the chat. If you're watching this on replay, I'll ask you to do the same. Any specific types of questions, challenges, things that you might want a little more information, how you might be able to bring this to your organization, the team that you're on, the team that you're supporting. I'm happy to answer any and all questions. Thanks for joining today, and we'll see you on our next live stream.